Picture this. You're sitting perfectly still. Your heart rate is normal. You feel entirely in control, maybe even relaxed, listening to your favorite podcast. Yet, statistically speaking, you are currently engaging in the deadliest activity you will perform all year. Meanwhile, another version of you is gripping armrests in pure terror, sweating profusely, convinced that death is imminent, when in reality, that terrified version of you is resting inside an impenetrable fortress of mathematical probability. Human beings have a bizarre biological glitch. Our brains are fundamentally hardwired to fear the safest places on Earth, while we happily whistle our way through daily death traps. To understand this massive psychological blind spot, we have to talk about how we measure survival. If I ask you to name the deadliest mode of transport, your brain probably summons images of spectacular, fiery wreckage, the kind of catastrophic anomalies that dominate the evening news. But scientists and statisticians don't measure danger by how cinematic the explosion is. They measure it by passenger miles. Simply put, for every billion miles a human travels in a specific vehicle, how many bodies are left behind? Let's start with the baseline of human transport, the one you likely use today, the personal automobile. We adore our cars. They represent freedom and autonomy. But if we look at the cold, hard data, the car is an absolute bloodbath. In the United States alone, over 40,000 people die in motor vehicle crashes every single year. The death rate per 100 million passenger miles is vastly higher than almost any other motorized option. You are trusting your life to a 2-ton metal box hurtling at 70 miles per hour, operated by a sleep-deprived, caffeine-fueled primate who is probably checking a text message. Yet, because your hands are on the steering wheel, your brain floods you with a comforting lie, the illusion of control. We mistakenly equate control with safety, even though human error is responsible for roughly 94% of all traffic accidents. So, if cars are rolling statistical nightmares, what are the safer alternatives? Our quest for survival takes us away from individual control and into the realm of mass transit. Let's look at the oceans. Ships and ferries might trigger deep, primal fears of drowning, thanks in no small part to a rather famous iceberg in 1912. But the truth is, modern commercial maritime travel is remarkably secure. The vast majority of water-related fatalities occur in small, private recreational boats, usually involving alcohol and a lack of life jackets. Large passenger ships are heavily regulated, but they are still vulnerable to extreme weather and complex evacuations, so they aren't the absolute pinnacle of safety. What about the bus? It lacks glamour, but the humble bus is a mathematical juggernaut of survival. Over the last decade, the passenger vehicle death rate was over 70 times higher than that of buses. Why? Physics and professionalism. Buses are massive, absorbing impact force easily, and their drivers are heavily trained professionals who don't spend their route scrolling through TikTok. Then we have the iron giants, trains. Rail travel triggers a different kind of mechanical anxiety for some, but European Commission data shows that the risk of death for a train passenger is around 0.09 fatalities per billion passenger kilometers. That makes trains roughly 28 times safer than cars. In fact, the most dangerous thing about a train isn't riding in it, it's the cars that try to race it at level crossings. When you isolate the data to just actual rail passengers, the fatality numbers plummet to near zero. We are getting closer to the ultimate fortress of safety. But before we reveal the transport mode that mathematically defies the Grim Reaper, I need you to do something that takes exactly 5 seconds. Click that subscribe button. This channel is fighting for its life against the YouTube algorithm, and your subscription is the only redundant safety system keeping me from crashing into obscurity. Done? Thank you. We've ruled out cars, ships, buses, and even trains. Which leaves us with a mode of transport that triggers extreme clinical anxiety in up to 40% of the population. A mode of transport that requires you to step into a pressurized metal tube, sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers, and be hurled through the troposphere at 500 miles per hour in an environment where the outside air is unbreathable and the temperature is negative 60 degrees. Welcome to commercial aviation. Statistically, it is not just the safest way to travel, it is one of the safest activities human beings have ever engineered in the history of our species. Remember the passenger vehicle death rate? The fatality rate for scheduled commercial airlines is roughly 1,200 times lower than driving. In fact, between 2002 and 2020, there were multiple years where there were exactly 0 deaths per 100 million passenger miles in commercial air travel in the US. To put this absurdity into perspective, a statistical analysis based on recent flight fatality data revealed that a person would have to take a flight every single day for over 25,000 years to mathematically expect to experience a fatal accident. So why do our palms sweat during takeoff? It comes back to that bizarre biological glitch. Evolution programmed us to fear heights, loud noises, and sudden drops, all of which happen on a plane. More importantly, we are stripped of all control. You are strapped into a chair, completely surrendering your destiny to two pilots behind a locked door. Your brain perceives this helplessness as an extreme threat. But it is precisely this lack of your involvement that makes flying so safe. Aviation has systematically eliminated the human error that plagues our highways. A commercial jet is a marvel of redundant engineering. If an engine fails, the plane can fly perfectly fine on the other. If the computers fail, there are backup computers for the backup computers. If the pilot makes a mistake, automated systems scream at them to correct it. Every single crash in aviation history has resulted in new, mandatory global regulations, meaning the system literally learns from blood and permanently rewrites its DNA to ensure that specific accident never happens again. The ultimate irony of travel is that the moment you feel the safest is usually when you are in the most danger. When you land after a long flight, hear the wheels touch down, and unbuckle your seatbelt, you probably let out a deep sigh of relief. You survived the sky. But the cold, hard statistical truth is that the most dangerous part of your entire journey is just beginning, the drive from the airport back to your house. We are terrible at calculating risk because we let our ancient survival instincts judge modern engineering. The next time you experience turbulence, and your stomach drops, just look at the people casually sleeping around you. They are the ones whose brains have successfully aligned with reality. You aren't defying death up there, you are being shielded from it by the most rigorous safety net ever devised. The true danger is waiting for you in the parking lot.